We were never meant to tamper with what lies beyond. Some knowledge should remain in darkness, because once it's seen, it never looks away.
Welcome back to Nocturnic, where we'll leave reason at the door, and take a closer look at the stories people don't dare to share in daylight. Tonight, we've got a story that's like any other. Teenage girls, a silly internet ritual they thought was just for laughs. They thought it was just a game. If you are into stories like this, strange, true, and crawling under your skin, go ahead and subscribe to Nocturnic. That's why you won't miss it when the next one comes knocking. Now, let's get into it.
I have never told this story to anyone I know in real life, and for good reason. But after reading some stuff here, I thought maybe it's time to write it out. I won't use real names for their privacy and my own, so let's call me Maya. The friends in this story, Lana and Emma. This happened when we were in high school. It was a weekend when we planned one of those typical teenage girl sleepovers. We were all pretty close back then, and the idea was to stay at Lana's house because her parents were going out of town for the weekend. Just her and her younger brother, Dylan, were going to be home. I remember being so excited about it. We packed snacks, got our phones ready for tons of pictures, and even planned to do some stupid dances. Classic high school stuff. When we got there that evening, everything was just normal. The house was a little older, kind of creaky, but cozy. We spread out in Lana's living room, chips, sodas, candy everywhere. I remember Emma bringing this huge bag of gummy worms, and Lana kept stealing them. We played loud music, did makeup on each other, and spammed Instagram stories. At some point, we started teasing Dylan, Lana's little brother. He was maybe 10 or 11 back then, and he kept hovering around us. We playfully bullied him, called him Little Spy and Baby Boy Dylan, nothing serious. But I remember him getting red in the face and stomping off to his room. We just laughed it off and kept dancing. Later, around maybe 10 p.m., we decided to watch a horror movie. We turned off the lights and huddled on the couch, giggling and screaming at every jump scare. And then, halfway through, the lights just cut out. At first, we thought it was part of the movie, but then we noticed that even the streetlights outside were dead. Total blackout. The sky was cloudy, so it was pitch black outside. No moon, no stars. We all grabbed our phones, and the first thing we did was check our Instagram posts from earlier. Typical, right? All of us crowded around, reading dumb comments like, "Where's my invite?" That's when Lana suddenly said, "Hey guys, I saved this link earlier. It's like this ritual thing people are doing online. Want to try it?" Immediately, we all went, "Nope, hard pass." But she kept pushing, saying it was just for fun and that nothing would actually happen. And, well, peer pressure is real. After some teasing and laughing at how we were all scared of cats, we caved in. The ritual was simple but weird. It needed candles, a plate of water, a needle, and some other things I won't list. Not because I forgot, no. I remember every detail, but I don't want anyone trying it. The blackout weirdly made it feel like the perfect time. We were gonna light candles anyway since our phones were almost dead. Lana found a box of random old candles in their storage closet. They were mismatched, some half-burned, some dusty, but we made do. We sat in a circle, me, Lana, Emma, and Dylan, who insisted on joining even though he was clearly spooked. He sat there, trying to act tough, but his hands were shaking when he held his candle. We set the plate of water in the center and started the steps. It felt dumb at first, repeating phrases, pricking fingers, dropping things into the water. But when we reached the last part, something shifted. I felt this weird tightness in my chest, like anxiety but heavier. Still, we finished it. Nothing happened. We all burst out laughing, calling ourselves idiots for thinking it would work. The tension broke, and for the next hour, we just sat around talking until our phones completely died one by one. That's when we decided to finally go to bed. Lana and Dylan went to her parents' room, and I stayed with Emma in Lana's bedroom. Now here's where everything gets messed up. Sometime later, Emma shook me awake. She was holding one of the candles, her face pale in the dim light. She whispered, "Maya, come with me to the bathroom. I'm scared." I was so exhausted and honestly pissed that she woke me. I snapped at her to go alone and not to bother me again. I remember her eyes wide and surprised, like she wasn't expecting me to be so harsh. She just nodded and left, the flickering candlelight disappearing as the door shut. Immediately after, this overwhelming anger hit me. It was irrational. Like I wanted to punch something. I never felt that before, especially not toward my best friend. I drifted back to sleep until something strange woke me up. A light, but not normal candlelight. When I opened my eyes, I saw the candle Emma left on the desk was still burning, but the flame wasn't yellow. It was red, deep blood red. At first, I thought maybe it was some weird colored wax or something, but no candle burns red like that. I sat up, and that's when I noticed the room was empty. Emma wasn't back. I grabbed the candle and stepped into the hallway. Total darkness, but the red flame cast this eerie glow that made everything look wrong, like the walls were slightly breathing or shifting. I wasn't scared yet, more annoyed, thinking they were pranking me. I checked the bathroom, empty. The guest room, empty. I even called out, "Guys, not funny," but my voice sounded small in the silence. Then I heard it. Soft murmuring from the living room, the room where we did the ritual. I walked toward it. When I turned the corner and looked inside, my stomach dropped. There were 5 figures standing in a circle, tall, wearing long black robes with strange red symbols that seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. They each held candles with the same red flames, and in the center was Dylan. Except, he wasn't the scared little brother anymore. He stood there calm, like he was in charge. He was speaking in this low tone, and the hooded figures nodded like they were obeying him. When he noticed me, he stopped. Slowly, all 5 figures turned their heads toward me. I couldn't see their faces, just darkness under the hoods. Then they looked down at the candle I was holding. That's when they started walking toward me. Slow, deliberate steps, in sync. Dylan just stood there, his face twisted into this cold, empty stare. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My legs felt like jelly, barely working. But instinct kicked in, and I turned and staggered toward the stairs. They followed, still slow, but steady, like they had all the time in the world. I dragged myself upstairs, every step feeling heavier. I barely made it back into Lana's bedroom and slammed the door shut, locking it. My body gave out, and I collapsed on the floor. I set the candle down, and the red flame flared brighter, almost alive. From under the door, I saw their red lights pooling against the floor. They had stopped outside. I could hear faint whispers, like they were chanting. That's when I started praying. I wasn't religious, but it was the only thing I could think of. Over and over, I muttered every prayer I could remember from my grandma. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Eventually, the red light started to fade. I heard the footsteps retreating. I kept praying until my voice was hoarse. I didn't dare move. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe hours. But at some point, I noticed the candle's flame shift, from red back to normal yellow. And that's when everything hit me. The fear, the exhaustion, I blacked out right there on the cold floor. When I woke up, daylight was coming through the window. Birds were chirping. Everything looked normal. But I couldn't move. Not out of weakness, out of fear. I was paralyzed with terror, convinced that even twitching would bring them back. Then came the knock. I almost had a heart attack until I heard Emma's voice calling my name. Maya, are you okay? Can you open the door? Her voice snapped me out of it. I somehow stood up, legs shaking, and unlocked the door. There she was, looking totally normal but confused. The first thing I did was hug her and blurt out an apology for not going with her to the bathroom. She just laughed and said, "It's okay, I get it." But when I asked her where she was last night, that's when the pieces started falling apart. She said after I fell asleep, Lana called her, asking if she'd come with her to the neighbor's house because she wanted to call her parents about finding extra candles. Their neighbor, an older lady, invited them to stay the night since her own phone was dead, and she didn't want to be alone in the blackout, so they stayed there. She thought I knew. She thought I stayed back with Dylan. When I asked her where Lana was now, Emma said that she was at the hospital with Dylan. Apparently, sometime during the night, he spiked a high fever and started convulsing. They rushed him in the early morning. I didn't say a word about what I saw. I just nodded and tried to act normal. For years have passed since that night. Dylan. He never spoke again. Doctors say he suffered some kind of trauma that caused selective mutism. He hasn't said a single word since. Not one. I've kept this to myself because no one would believe me. I barely believe it myself. But sometimes, late at night when I close my eyes, I still see that red flame, and those 5 hooded figures, waiting in the dark. So, yeah. I'm writing it here now. I don't know what I saw that night, or what saved me, my prayers, or my luck. Stay away from those stupid rituals. Please.
Science would tell you this was a case of overactive imagination fueled by stress. For 4 years, science has not explained why the boy has not spoken a word. That's where their explanation ends, and ours begin. Let's start with the ritual. Fire, water, blood, and words. That's an ancient structure you find in serious occult practices. Not playground games. Fire is the summoner, water is the portal, blood is the offering, and words are the command. This isn't new. It's the same structure found in Eastern European summoning rites, African spirit work, and old grimoires from the Middle Ages. The moment they pricked their fingers and added blood to water, they crossed the line from fun to invitation. And when you invite, something answers. Now, let's look at the red flames. In no normal circumstance, 2 candles burn red. Scientifically, a flame's color changes based on the temperature and chemicals. Red flames are cooler, produced by lithium or strontium. But in spiritual traditions, red light is something else entirely. In Eastern European folklore, red fire marks when spirits cross into the human realm. In Arabic lore, red flame is a sign of jinn manifesting. It's not illumination, it's a signal. A flare that says the barrier is broken. In ritual magic, practitioners fear this shift to red because it means they have lost control of the summoning. So when our witnesses saw red flames, it wasn't a trick. It was confirmation that something was very present. Now, the figures. 5 hooded faceless beings moving in perfect sync. This matches global accounts of what occultists call servitors, shadows, or watchers. They appear during failed rituals as enforcers or collectors. They are not random. They are structured, with hierarchy. And notice, they did not go for the girls. They responded to the boy. That's a huge detail. Suggests that in the chaos of the ritual, the entity or force that arrived chose him as the focus. Vulnerable, humiliated earlier, emotionally unstable. In folklore, that's prime hunting ground for possession or attachment. And the boy standing calm in the center, leading the chant while the figures obeyed. That tells us he was not resisting. He was already claimed. Then there is psychological manipulation. Our witness described sudden irrational rage at her friend, a common report in paranormal events where entities influence emotions to isolate and weaken targets. It's a tactic, divide and conquer, make the victim push away help, classic pattern. The physical symptoms seal it. The boy's high fever and convulsions after the event align with what older traditions would call spirit sickness, the body reacting violently to invasion or possession. Modern medicine sees only symptoms, trauma and mutism. But in folklore, it's the price of contact with forces that should not cross over. The shifting walls, the unnatural silence, the red candle that seemed alive. These are not hallucinations. They are recurring features in reports from people who have accidentally or deliberately summoned something real. And they all describe the same aftermath. Environmental disturbance, emotional breakdown, and permanent scars, psychological or physical. So, what happened here? They played with a ritual that was far older and far more dangerous than they realized. They cracked open a door, and something stepped through. Something organized, structured, and looking for a host. The red flames were not decoration. They laid the path for it. The figures were not shadows. They were its agents. And the boy was not a victim. By the end, he was the center. Chosen, claimed, and left for altered. And for those thinking this is just an old scary story, consider this. 4 years later, science still can't fix the boy. Doctors still call it unknown trauma, and no one in that house speaks of what they really saw. That's not sleep deprivation. That's the mark of something far older and far darker. So, what's the lesson here? Simple. Stay away from rituals. All of them. Even the ones that look harmless, sound like fun, or show up on social media as a trend. Because every now and then, one of them works. And when it does not care if you meant it as a joke. The things that answer don't have a sense of humor. If you enjoyed this dive into the shadows, and you want more, consider subscribing to Nocturnic. Join us here, where we don't just tell stories, we take them apart piece by dark piece. Now, get some rest. Stay away from old candles, strange circles, and red flames, and we'll meet again soon, with another story waiting in the dark. Good night.